ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 8, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Leaves Home, Text 21. तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो यमेकमत्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखै यमेकमत्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखैः इष्ट्वा वित्पेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो इष्ट्वा पिपेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो भौमं सुखं दिव्यमथापवर्ग्यम् भौमं सुखं दिव्यम् अथापवर्ग्यम् तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो यमेकमत्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखैः इष्ट्वा विपेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो भौमं सुखं दिव्यमथापवर्ग्यम् तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो यमेकमत्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखैः इष्ट्वा विपेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो भौमं सुखं दिव्यमथापवर्ग्यम् तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो यमेकमत्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखैः इष्ट्वा विपेदे दुर्वापमन्यतो भौमं सुखं दिव्यमथापवर्ग्यम् तथा मनुर्वो भगवान् पितामहो त्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखैः Ishtva vipede duravapabanyato Sukham divyamathapavaryam Tatha manurva Bhagavan pitamaha Yamekamatya purudakshinairmakhai Divyamathapavaryam Tatha manurvo Bhagavan pitamaha Yamekamatya purudakshinairmakhai Ishtva vipede duravapamanyato Bhaumam sukham divyamathapavaryam Tatha. Similarly, Manuhu Swayambhuva Manu Vaha Yo Bhagavan worshipable Pitamaha grandfather Yam unto whom Ekamatya with unflinching devotion Puru great Dakshinehi charity Makai by executing sacrifices Ishtva worshipping Abhipede achieved Duravapam difficult to achieve Anyataha by any other means Bhaumam material Sukham happiness Divyam celestial Atha thereafter Apavaryam liberation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Suniti informed her son, your grandfather Swayambhuva Manu executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby with unflinching faith and devotion he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way he achieved the greatest success in material happiness, and afterwards achieved liberation, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the demigods. Purport. The success of one's life is measured by one's material happiness in this life and liberation in the next. Such success can be achieved only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words ekamatya mean concentrating one's mind on the Lord without deviation. This process of undeviating worship of the Supreme Lord is also expressed in Bhagavad Gita as Ananya Bhak. That which is impossible to obtain from any other source is also mentioned here. Other source refers to worship of the demigods. It is especially stressed here that the opulence of Manu was due to his undeviating faithfulness in the transcendental service of the Lord. One who diverts his mind to worshipping many demigods to obtain material happiness is considered bereft of intelligence. If anyone wants even material happiness, he can worship the Supreme Lord without deviation, and persons who are desirous of liberation can also worship the Supreme Lord and achieve their goal of life. Om Jnanatimandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapatakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya. Vancha Kalpaturu Vyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you for coming this morning to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Yesterday, Nrsimha Pr Maharaj gave a very nice class on the theme of Dhruva Maharaj's determination. And his point was that Dhruva Maharaj, we can learn from his determination one thing, which is that we should have so much implicit faith in the words of our spiritual master, and we should execute the instructions of our spiritual master to such with such focus and determination that we can go back to Godhead in one lifetime. And Srila Prabhupada many times he said that as well. Why do you want to come back into this material world? Go back, finish your business in one lifetime, and go back to Godhead in one lifetime. Even if you read the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where it's mentioned that those who perform devotional service in this lifetime, but they're not successful, they take their birth in the next life in the family of pious people or wealthy merchants. So you might think, after hearing this from Bhagavad Gita, from Krishna, that all is not lost. I get an opportunity in my next lifetime. But there's a catch. If you read carefully, it's explained that before they take their birth in a family of pious people or wealthy people, first they spend thousands of years in the heavenly planets, enjoying there, fulfilling their material desires, before they come back down to earth and then carry on with their devotional service if they didn't do it in the heavenly planets. So it's a very precarious situation to be in. That's why Srila Prabhupada stressed that. I think it's the next chapter. This is chapter 8 of the 4th canto, but in the next chapter, in the 9th chapter, there's one verse there which mentions that people think that the material distresses that we experience in this material and the material happiness, it comes about because of different factors. Some people say that material happiness and distress comes about because of other living entities, Adi Bhautika Klesh. Some people say it's because of karma. You perform some action and naturally you get material happiness or distress as a reaction. Some people say it's because of prakriti, material nature. By the organization of whatever happens in the external world, you get a reaction. Some people say it's because of the time factor. And then lastly, it's mentioned. And some people say material happiness and distress exists because of desire. And out of all these 4 or 5 things, in the purport, if you read, Srila Prabhupada focuses on desire. Because actually, everything that we are experiencing in this world is because of desire. We come into this world, in this material world, because of desire. And we leave this material world to go back to the spiritual world because, again, we desire to do that. And unless and until that desire manifests genuinely in your heart, unless that realization dawns with you in yourself, no amount of pushing by any other person will put you on that path of going back to Godhead in one lifetime. It requires greed, as Rupa Goswami says, lobha. It's a transcendental quality that we should beg Krishna for, that we should beg pure devotees for. One day, Ayendra Prabhu, actually not one day, one night, Ayendra Prabhu was chanting his japa in his room, and there was a thought that kept coming to him, something that Srila Prabhupada would often mention in his lectures, in his books. First deserve, then desire. First deserve, then desire. Now, what does that mean? And Prabhupada explained in another situation that if you are, let's say you're an illiterate person, you can't even read anything, is there any use of you desiring to become like a surgeon or something like that, a neurosurgeon or something like that. You can't even read. So given your situation, given your qualification or lack of qualification, there's no point in you desiring something so high. In the same way, if you're a struggling bhakta, you can't even follow the basic things, is there any use of you desiring such high, lofty service, some intimate service in the spiritual world? So in that context, Srila Prabhupada would say, first deserve, get some qualification first, some basic qualification, not like a post-dated check, have some money in your bank account before the bank will give you some loan, right? So first deserve, then desire. So this thought kept ringing in Ayner Prabhu's mind. First it came, every now and then. Then it came like every 5 minutes. It came every round that he was chanting. Then it just got the frequency of that thought sped up. And so much so that he couldn't focus on hearing what he was saying, the mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. First deserve, then desire, first deserve. And then he got so fed up that he just put his beads aside. And then he yelled, Srila Prabhupada, when do I deserve to desire? And then it's explained that there was an Akashvani in his room. There was an ethereal voice in his room. And that voice says, when your desire is big. So he explains, his realization is that when your desire is so big to do something that it consumes your whole mind, your whole consciousness, at that point in time, you deserve to desire. So, therefore, it is also a fact that even someone who is illiterate, like the Brahmana in South India, who is instructed by his guru to read the Bhagavad Gita, even if you're someone like that, if you have a strong desire, so much so that it's consuming your entire consciousness, still you can achieve perfection. And that's what we see in the case of Dhruva Maharaj. He's a 5-year-old boy. He probably can't even cook for himself. Maybe he needs help. His mother helps him putting his clothes on. But he has such an intense desire, such intense determination, that within 5 months, a 5-year-old boy was able to invoke the physical presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the example that we should follow. One other thing we can understand is that Srila Prabhupada would often say that we should not jump to the 10th canto, right? All the preceding cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam from 1 to 9 are there to prepare us to then come to reading 10th canto. So you'll notice that in different cantos, there's different things that you can learn from different devotees. So here in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, we can learn the quality of Dridhavrat. We can learn the quality of determination and seriousness to perform devotional service. So that when we actually go to 10th canto and we hear the pastimes of Krishna and his intimate associates, for example, we see that Krishna at night time was playing his flute and he was calling all the gopis to come and dance with him at night time. But some of the gopis who still had material bodies, who still had a little bit of anarthas left, they weren't fully, they didn't have their Swarup Siddhi, Vastu Siddhi. They didn't have Vastu Siddhi. They hadn't gotten their spiritual bodies yet. They were held back by their family members. No, you're not allowed to go. But they had such determination, such seriousness to be with Krishna. It's called Purvarag. If you read teachings of Lord Chaitanya, there Srila Prabhupada explains Purvarag. The desire to be with Krishna was so intense that they gave up their bodies. And then they got their spiritual bodies, and then they were allowed to go and dance with Krishna. So if we appreciate Dhruva Maharaj's determination, then what to speak of this determination where someone actually gives up their body? Right? The gopis also wanted to be with Krishna. Dhruva Maharaj also wanted to get the darshan of Krishna to fulfill his desire. And then when we read pastimes or when we hear pastimes of when Narada Muni goes to Krishna and Krishna apparently has a headache and he says, the only thing that can cure me is the dust from the feet of my devotee. And then he goes to Lord Shiva and different devotees and says, I can't give my dust from my feet, I'll go to hell. And then he goes to the gopis and they say, yes, if our foot dust is going to cure Krishna's headache, then forget about us, maybe suffering in hell, we'll give it. So this is the determination, the quality of Dridhabrat, which is fully manifested in the 10th canto. But Srimad Bhagavatam is preparing us to understand that this is the qualification we need to develop, and then we see it in perfection in the 10th canto. I'll give a material example. Why I'm giving a material example is because this is also Krishna's preaching technique in Bhagavad Gita. Right? If you read the 10th canto, the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there Krishna explains his grandeur, his greatness in terms of material things. Right? Of all mountains, of all immovable objects, I am Himalayas. Of all bodies of water, I am the ocean. Of all aquatics, I am the shark. Why is he using this material example? Because at the end of the 10th chapter, he says, Atava bhune tena kim gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyamidam krishnam ekam shinastu jagat. He says, what to speak of all these material things? We think Himalayan mountains is so great. We think the ocean is so vast. And then Krishna right at the end, he says, this is just a little tiny fragment of my actual splendor. You can't even begin to understand. So this is Krishna's preaching technique. Using some material example to then glorify himself even more. So everyone knows Honda. Yeah, Honda is an automobile company, or rather more specifically it's a motorcycle company. It's the largest motorcycle company in the world. It's the 8th largest automobile industry in the world. And Honda, I don't know how many employees it currently employs, but over 100,000 employees. So Honda, as you can probably guess by the name, is a Japanese name. So there was a man called Soichiro Honda, and he came from just a very normal middle-class family in Japan. But in his university days, he invented this pistons. I don't know exactly what it was, but some pistons, some design he invented. And this is something that car manufacturers use in their engines. So he came up with some revolutionary design for that. And then he went and he met with Toyota. And Toyota said that, yeah, we're very impressed by your piston ring design. And, we want it. So we'll give you money. We'll give you some of our capital. And you go and start a factory to manufacture these pistons. And then you supply it to us. So that's what he did. He spent the capital, the money given by Toyota, to build a very grand factory for him to start his manufacturing. And after the whole factory was set up, what happened? Japan is famous for earthquakes. So there was a big earthquake and the whole factory fell down, just into rubbles. So if we were in that situation, what would we do? Maybe I shouldn't do it. I don't want to do it again. I was listening to my Guru Maharaj. He was reading about Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. And before Srila Prabhupada wrote his Bhaktivedanta purports for Bhagavad Gita, he had also made a previous manuscript. And he had written 1,200 pages worth of Bhaktivedanta purports, which then was lost. He came home one day and it was lost. He couldn't see it. He couldn't find it. But he started again from scratch. Srila Prabhupada's determination, Srila Prabhupada's compassion. So this guy Honda, his factory fell down. It was at rubbles in the earthquake. Again, he decided, okay, let me build the factory again. But by that time, Japan had entered World War II. So the cost of cement was very high. The government wouldn't allow him to take cement and build another factory. So he invented a way to create cement, another way to create cement. And using that method, he constructed another factory. So second time, his factory is set up. And then what happens? One day these American bombers come, planes. They drop bombs right on his factory. Again, smashed. And then he tries again. For a third time he tries. he builds the factory again. And this time, when he's building the factory for a third time, he even uses some of the parts of the bombers, the American bombers. Yukta Vairagya. So he builds a factory for the third time. And he's ready to start his business. But by that time, Japan had lost the war, World War II, and the economy of the country was in shambles. So there was no, Toyota was not willing to buy the parts from him. There was no demand in the market. So for a third time he lost. Then one day, he was still determined to be successful in material life. One day he was just riding his bicycle, and he gets the idea, what if I put a motor on this bike? And I'm pedaling through it. Everyone, some of you drive Uber, so you can thank Honda for that idea. So he thought, let me put a motor engine on this bicycle. And he does that. And he creates this bike with a motor, and he gives it to 15 or 20 of his close friends to try it out, to get their feedback. And they give really positive feedback to him. So you can see his determination now. This is before the days of the internet, this is before the days of email. In Japan at that time, there was 8,000 bicycle stockists, bicycle shops, bicycle shop owners. He personally wrote a letter to 8,000 bicycle shop owners, telling them about this idea of his. Out of these 8,000 letters that he wrote, 1,800 of them responded back, saying that, okay, we'll give you some money to start this new invention of yours. And then using that money, he developed this bicycle. It's called the Honda Cub. You can even look it up. And from that was the beginning of his big business. So we can learn one thing. Again, material example, but determination is one thing. One man's determination for a material cause. And second thing is, he thought that he would be successful by selling these pistons. But actually, according to his karma, he was supposed to be successful in another way. So the other thing we can learn is, we don't know where Krishna is going to give us success, where Krishna is going to give us failure. So our duty is simply to carry out the instructions of the spiritual master. Now, he was determined so much for material success. Now, what to speak of us? Why should we be determined to practice devotional service? We have such a supreme cause to be determined, to become a pure devotee of Krishna, isn't it? So at least we should show that amount of determination, that amount of faith, and practice Krishna consciousness. And for that, we need to serve Guru. So here we also see that Suniti is acting as the Guru of her son. And in the next verse, if you read, she further in this verse, she's telling him that she's glorifying Dhruva Maharaj's grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, telling him that he executed great sacrifices, distributed charity. He enjoyed materially while he was living. And then, even while living, he got liberation. And then she says in the next verse to Dhruva Maharaj, therefore you should go to the forest, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God, because I've heard that he can fulfill everyone's desires. He's more caring than any mother in this mature world. So you go and take shelter of him. So Maharaj touched upon this yesterday as well, but there's 4 types of gurus. So Suniti, Dhruva Maharaj's mother, is acting as his Vartamana Pradakshaka Guru. Vartamana Pradakshaka Guru means that Guru who shows one the path of Krishna consciousness. We're absorbed in a material consciousness, and some book distributor comes along, or you hear someone doing kirtan, or someone gives you prasad, and your first contact with Krishna consciousness, they tell you the way. Hey, this is spiritual food. You should eat it. If you eat this food, it will elevate your consciousness. You become purified. And then you start to take an interest. So that's your Vartamana Pradakshaka Guru. My Guru Maharaj gives an example that, when he was becoming a devotee in the initial days, then he was reading Srila Prabhupada's books for 4 hours a day for 6 months straight, but he never went to the temple. And one day he got the courage to step into the temple. And when he stepped into the temple, there was a devotee at the entrance of the temple. And he said, "Welcome, brother, you've come to the right place." Well, something like loosen your feet and start tapping your feet to the music in the temple hall. And then my Guru Maharaj explains that just by him saying that, he felt very comfortable and at ease. And my Guru Maharaj says that even when he meets that devotee to this day, he thanks that devotee for saying that to him. So in his Vyas Puja address last year, my Guru Maharaj was saying that whenever someone helps you in Krishna consciousness, you should always show gratitude to that person. So much so that you should never let them forget that they helped you in Krishna consciousness in some way, shape or form. So that's the Vartamana Prajaksha Guru. If we have to show so much gratitude to the person who just shows us the path, what about the Diksha Guru and the Shiksha Guru? Who is the Diksha Guru and the Shiksha Guru of Dhruva Maharaj? Yeah, Narada Muni. So traditionally speaking, the Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru was the same person, like in a traditional village setting. But now, of course, in ISKCON, the Diksha Guru, one who initiates you into the parampara, he may have hundreds, thousands of disciples, and he has to travel as well, right? So then our Shiksha Guru becomes our local temple authority. So in our current context, the Shiksha Guru is our local temple authorities, some senior devotee within the congregation, and they teach us how we should perform our bhajan, how we should perform our sadhana, so that we can become a pure devotee of Krishna. And then Chaitya Guru. If you read, Chaitya Guru is Krishna within the heart. So it's mentioned in the 4th canto, in Dhruva Maharaj pastimes, that not only did Narada Muni initiate Dhruva Maharaj in the chanting of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, but he also instructed him to form a murti. So Dhruva Maharaj was also meditating on the murti of Krishna as well. And in his meditation, when he was chanting, he was seeing Krishna, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that same Chaitya Guru manifest himself physically as Prishnigarbha Vishnu. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that Guru is a must. In Bhakti Yoga, to advance in Krishna consciousness, we must have a spiritual master. We must take initiation from a living spiritual master. I remember a lecture I was hearing of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, some of his godbrothers used to call him the hot tamale. Apparently it's some sort of a hot sauce. So especially in his young years, Maharaj was very fiery. He was a very fire preacher. He mellowed down later on. He was a very fiery preacher. So he was giving a Bhagavatam class, and then it was question answer time, and there was some new bhakta there. And the new bhakta was expressing doubts about taking initiation. And Maharaj directly confronted him. How long have you been in Krishna consciousness? And he said, about a year. And are you chanting 16 rounds? Yes. Are you following the 4 principles? Yes. Then why are you delaying taking initiation? Do you have any doubts? Because if you have any doubts, you can ask me the questions, I'll clarify those doubts. Like that he was challenging. The very fact that you're not taking initiation means you have no faith. You're lacking somewhere. Krishna says in the Adi Puran, Yo me bhakta jana parta, na me bhakta chate jana. Mad bhakta nam chaye bhakta, te me bhakta tamamata. Krishna is very heavy. He tells Arjuna that those who think that they're my devotees, they're not my devotees. You can only become Krishna's devotee if you surrender to Krishna's devotee. So we have to surrender to Krishna's devotee in order to get perfection in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada talks about his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as not only his guide, but also his friend. So my Guru Maharaj was explaining, generally when we think of friend, we think someone that we can just, throw our hands around that person's back and just joke with them and things like that. So we can't be friendly with our Guru like that. Friendly with the spiritual master means that you become friendly with his mission. Srila Prabhupada became friendly with the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So we should become friendly with the purpose of Srila Prabhupada starting ISKCON, writing his books. That friendship is there. Yesterday Ganeshampu was giving us a class and he mentioned that you will notice that you may only see your spiritual master once in a year, once every couple of years like that.
But whenever your spiritual master comes, even though you don't get to see them regularly in a physical presence, as soon as they come, immediately as soon as they come physically, and you take personal darshan, you'll feel a very close connection, as if you're very close to that person. So how is that? Because we have to be friendly with their instructions. We have to be friendly with their mission. So this is Vapu and Vani. Right? So the real association with the spiritual master is by following their instructions. So Dhruva Maharaj followed to the minute detail the instructions of Narada Muni, and he gained perfection. Krishna himself came. And one other point we can see here is Swayambhuva Manu. Here Suniti, Dhruva Maharaj's mother, is glorifying Swayambhuva Manu. Srila Prabhupada starts his purport by saying that the success of one's life is measured by one's material happiness in this life and liberation in the next. Now, if you read the translation, she's saying that your grandfather Swayambhuva Manu executed great sacrifices and distributed charity. And thereby, by unflinching faith and devotion, he worshipped and satisfied Krishna. Then she says, by acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness and afterwards achieved liberation. The way she's saying this makes you think that that Swayambhuva Maharaj has already left this world. You know, while he was living, he worshipped Krishna, and at the end, he left his body, he left his physical presence in this world, and he achieved liberation. But actually, that's not the case. Because if you keep reading this pastime, you'll see that Dhruva Maharaj, he goes to the forest, he does his tapasya for 5 months, you know, Vishnu comes, gives him the blessing that, you know, you'll stay in Dhruva Loka, you'll become a great king, you'll rule for 36,000 years, your senses will not even fade in their strength, all these blessings he gives. Uttanapad, Dhruva Maharaj's father, he feels guilty that his son has gone to the forest, so he calls, Dhruva Maharaj comes back and there's a grand procession. After some time, Uttanapad feels that it's time for me to go to the forest now, following in the footsteps of my son. And then he installs Dhruva Maharaj on the throne. Dhruva Maharaj becomes a great king. He grows up, he becomes a great king. One day, Dhruva Maharaj's brother, Uttama, goes to the forest. He's killed by a yaksha. Then Dhruva Maharaj wages war against the yakshas. And he starts killing the yakshas, hundreds and thousands of them. So much so that he starts offending, Bhagavatam says, Lord Shiva and Kuvera. Because Kuvera and Lord Shiva are brothers, and Kuvera is the king of the yakshas. And at that time, who comes to stop Dhruva Maharaj in his slaughter of the yakshas? His grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu. So if you read the translation, what Suniti is saying, it makes it seem that Manu has already left. He's already gone on liberation. No. But what we should learn from this is that because of Ananya Bhak, undeviating devotional service, Swayambhuva Maharaj, Manu, got liberation while still living. So again, coming back to that point of becoming a pure devotee while still living in his body, gaining pure Krishna consciousness, coming to that level while still living in his body, one lifetime. So I just want to read just a few verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the 3rd canto, about the activities of Swayambhuva Manu. This is after, because if you remember, one of the main pastimes in the 3rd canto was Kardama Muni and Devahuti, their marriage, and then how they produced children, and Kapila Muni was born like that. So this is after Swayambhuva Manu gives his daughter Devahuti to Kapila Muni. Then he embraces her because then he feels separation, and then he comes back home. He leaves his daughter Devahuti with Kardama Muni, and then he comes back, Swayambhuva Manu, he comes back to his palace. And he stays in a place called Barishmati. This is the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, Barishmati. Because that place is famous because when Lord Varaha Dev was fighting with Hiranyaksha, one of his hairs fell off, and they landed in the city. So the city became famous. It was a very, spiritual tirtha, and this was the home of Swayambhuva Manu. So Swayambhuva Manu has come home now after giving his daughter in charity to Kardama Muni. And Srimad Bhagavatam is saying that Emperor Swayambhuva Manu enjoyed life with his wife Shatarupa and subjects and fulfilled his desires without being disturbed by unwanted principles, contrary to the process of religion. Celestial musicians and their wives sang in chorus about the pure reputation of the emperor, and early in the morning every day he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart. And Srila Prabhupada's purport is very interesting. Why I'm reading this is so that we can understand how Swayambhuva Maharaj practiced Krishna consciousness while living, so that he got liberation while he was living. How he became a pure devotee, how he became a Mahajan, one of the 12 Mahajans. Srila Prabhupada says, the Vedic principles are designed in such a way that the conditioned souls who have come to this material existence may be guided in fulfilling their material desires, and at the same time be liberated and go back to God. This is exactly what Srila Prabhupada is saying here in the first line. The success of one's life is measured by one's material happiness in this life and liberation in the next. It is stated here that early in the morning there were musicians who used to sing with musical instruments about the glories of the Lord in Swayambhuva Manu's palace. And the emperor with his family personally used to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Person. This custom is still prevalent in India in some of the royal families and temples. Professional musicians sing with shanais, and the sleeping members of the house gradually get up from their beds in a pleasing atmosphere. During bedtime also, the singers sing songs in relationship with the pastimes of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada says, again with shanai accompaniment. Does anyone know what shanai is? The trumpet, very high-pitched trumpet. Okay, so that's the instrument that they play as members in the palace are waking up and going to sleep. Interesting. In every house, in addition to the singing program, there is an arrangement for Bhagavatam lectures in the evening. Family members sit down, hold Hare Krishna Kirtan, hear narrations from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and enjoy music before going to bed. The atmosphere created by this Sankirtan movement lives in their hearts, and while sleeping, they also dream of the singing and glorification of the Lord. In such a way, perfection of Krishna consciousness can be attained. This practice is very old, as learned from this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Millions of years ago, Swayambhuva Manu used to avail himself of this opportunity to live household life in peace and prosperity of a Krishna consciousness atmosphere. Next part is also interesting. Prabhupada says, as far as temples are concerned, in each and every royal palace or rich man's house, inevitably there is a nice temple, and the members of the household rise early in the morning and go to the temple to see the Mangal Artik ceremony. So earlier this year we went to Rajasthan for a few days as part of our temple project. Of course, we went to the Govinda Devji temple for Mangal Arti, and as it's said, like 400 or 500 people will be there in the morning, and they'll start singing half an hour before the curtains open, and that was exactly the case. What I had heard, I experienced. And if you go there and you stand in front of Govindaji, and then if you turn 180 degrees back behind, you'll see like a palace in the distance, maybe like 150 meters away in the distance. You'll see outside, far away from the temple. And you'll see it's like maybe 2-3 stories high, and you'll see a window there. So the king of Jaipur, he placed Govindaji in such a way so that from his bedroom he could see down like 150, 200 meters away into the temple room and get the direct darshan of Govindaji. So as he would wake up taking the darshan of Govindaji, and he would go to sleep taking the darshan of Govindaji. So this is Vedic culture. The Mangal Artik ceremony is the first worship of the morning. In the Artik ceremony, a light is offered in circles before the deities, as are a conch shell and flowers and a fan. The Lord is supposed to rise early in the morning and take some light refreshment and give audience to the devotees. The devotees then go back to the house or sing the glories of the Lord in the temple. The early morning ceremony still takes place, and Srila Prabhupada mentions that, in Indian temples and palaces. Temples are meant for the assembly of the general public. Temples within palaces are especially for the royal families. But in many of these palace temples, the public is also allowed to visit. The temple of the king of Jaipur is situated within the palace, but the public is allowed to assemble. If one goes there, he will see that the temple is always crowded with at least 500 devotees. After the Mangal Archik ceremony, they sit down together and sing the glories of the Lord with musical instruments and thus enjoy life. So this is a snapshot of the life of Swayambhuva. I'll just finish. There's more things, but we have 5 minutes. I'll just finish with just some of our experiences from that trip to Rajasthan. Just one particular experience. Speaking of how we should practice Krishna consciousness and how Swayambhuva Maharaj Manu practiced Krishna consciousness even as a householder, and he perfected his Krishna consciousness. When we left Vrindavan and we drove through UP and then into Haryana and then into Rajasthan, as soon as you enter Rajasthan, you can notice there's something different about this place. At least I felt like that. It was my first time there, but I felt like that. Just by looking at the way people deal with each other, just by looking at the way people, how they wear their clothes, you can tell this is like a different place. It's still quite, quite traditional, quite cultural. And we're going from different places, one, town to another town, looking at different materials that we could use for the temple construction, like that. And then at night time, we stayed at the house of some devotees. I think they were under shelter of His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj. But they were the only Krishna conscious devotees in that whole town. They had no other association. There was no temple nearby, nothing like that. It was a traditional Rajasthani family. That evening when we went there to their house, they made haldi sabji. Haldi sabji means they made sabji, curry made from turmeric. I had never heard of that before, but it's a traditional Rajasthani dish, and it tasted like very nice actually. The next morning for breakfast, they gave us Rajasthani dhokla. It's not the yellow dhokla that we're familiar with. Some different, I don't know what it's made of. Do you know, Pru? Huh? Barley. Bhati. I don't know what that is, but yeah. So freshly they made that, and then they had a jug, and that jug was full of ghee, transparent ghee, white transparent ghee. And it's not like how we just pour like one spoon like that. They were like tipping it on our plate. So our plate is like that. It has like 5-6 pieces of that dhokla, and they're filling the whole plate with ghee. I would have taken at least maybe close to 400 ml of ghee, half a liter of ghee or something. They were just pouring, and it was so light. It was so light, so tasty, so aromatic. I thought these people are so fortunate, to still be living like this. But that night that we went, they came and they welcomed us really nicely. And then in the morning, we had Mangalarti in their house actually. And then one of the devotees that we were with later on in the morning, he gave Srimad Bhagavatam class. But one of the interesting things is that there's a temple near their house. They live in a place called Merita, which is the place where Mirabai was born, the devotee of Krishna, Mirabai. So early in the morning, it was still dark outside. Must have been around 5 or 5:30 in the morning. They said, let's go to the temple of Mirabai. So we went, there was about 6-7 of us, and we went doing japa, on a japa walk, and we went to the temple, walked to the temple nearby, and the darshan was open, and we took darshan of the original deity of Krishna that Mirabai used to worship. There was also a nice big murti of Vishnu, and we were told by the priest there that this is the same murti that Parikshit Maharaj used to worship himself. So then we paid our obeisances, we offered our prayers, and then by that time, when we were coming out, when we came out of the temple, the sun had started to come, and in that small town of Merta, there was a group of devotees, there's maybe 20 of them. They started Harinam Sankirtan, and they had big speakers, they had 2-3 mics. They didn't have mridangas, they had their own traditional drums, and they just started chanting Hare Krishna in their tunes, not like ISKCON Hare Krishna. In their tunes, they started chanting Hare Krishna. we just followed them around for like the next half an hour, going from small alleyway to this lane, this street, and people were poking their heads out of their windows from their houses from the top and looking and smiling and clapping. Fortunately I got an opportunity to sing as well, to chant as well, to lead as well. And then after some time, when the Harinam party, the Nagar Sankirtan party, was close to their house, we left them and then we went back to our house. And then we had Bhagavatam class, and then they gave us nice prasad, and they packed prasad for us as well. And we left for that day's service, driving around. So that was my little experience, even today in Kali Yuga, in a small village like that in Rajasthan, how Vedic culture is still very much prevalent. So how glorious it must have been in the time of Dhruva Maharaj, Swayambhuva Manu. It was so conducive for people to become Krishna conscious. So, very fortunate. So, I'll finish there. Any questions, comments? Yes, ma'am. That you can know, right? That you can tell yourself. Karma Maharishi gives the litmus test for understanding our advancement in Krishna consciousness. Like Ganesh Rambu was also telling us, one litmus test is that how eager we are to hear from others about the glorification of Krishna. But one other litmus test is how attracted we are becoming to Krishna, and how much virakti, or how much disgust we are developing towards material sense gratification. The question is, how can we understand if we're genuinely desiring to please Krishna versus our own desire to get out of this material entanglement? So you should understand how less bodily conscious you're becoming. Because if you're conscious of your body, about the way we look, about how healthy we are, and these things are important. But if we're very conscious of the body, we still have the false ego. And then if we pray to Krishna, Krishna, please give me, I want to develop pure love for you, something not right about that, because we're still very much bodily conscious. So I would say that we can be sure that we are doing it genuinely 100% for Krishna, the more detached we become from our bodily concept of life. And detachment from bodily concept of life means how detached we become from sense gratification. Because if we still maintain the desire for sense gratification, and we pray to Krishna, Krishna, I'm doing this service for you, it's like how Srila Prabhupada says, sex life and Krishna consciousness go ill together. How can you say to Krishna that I'm doing this for you, for your pleasure of your senses, but at the same time we have a desire to satisfy our own senses? So again, I say that's something that you can understand. How much taste you're getting in Krishna consciousness, and how much you're able to not care about your eating, sleeping, mating, defending. To the degree you become less bodily conscious, to the degree that you are able to genuinely give up your false ego and show humility and gratitude for the situation you're in, to that degree, when you do service to Krishna, you can be sure that yes, it is exclusively for Krishna. So it's a gradual process. We'll finish it. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.